All right. Today is Friday, March 7, 2017. This is the implementation. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI implementation group. So let's get started. Today on the agenda, I broke down the tasks that we have remaining for the 1.10 release to make it much more explicit what is left to be done before the 1.10 release. The major categories are updating the existing CSI drivers to be 0.2 compatible. Then second thing is finding a permanent home for some of the so-called unowned important drivers. Then cutting a 0.2 release for all the external components. We can do this closer to the 1.10 release. Documentation, updating the Kubernetes documentation, the Kubernetes CSI documentation, and then testing and continuous integration. And we need to add testing and continuous integration at all the layers, from the Kubernetes side all the way down to the drivers. This is a considerable amount of work. The idea is to have priorities. The P0, P1s are the ones that we really, really want to make sure that we finish before 1.10. And we need volunteers for most of this work. So let's start at the top. Before I go into assigning tasks here, we can do a quick round of updates. Are there any updates folks want to give or talk about?
Maybe a question from my side.
Sure.
So the task about the components probing before the operation, so we won't do that for 1.10.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I mean, I have a prototype for that. So, I mean, if we really want, we could include it.
Okay. That's your call, Sergey. It's so basically it's out of tree and it's it's applicable per driver. So if I guess I imagine you've done it for Ceph.
Actually, no, I have done it for host path. Okay. And I thought that maybe we could add it to the CSI common library. And then, like, if plugin developer wants to include that, basically they just import that and use it.
Oh, that would be cool.
Because it exists as a binary which needs to be added to the plugin image. Because the probe works this way, so it executes a binary from the image where plugin exists, okay. And then it probes on the socket with the frequency.
Okay. For now, let's say keep it in host path, and then for the next quarter, maybe we could take this as a task to move it to a library that other drivers can import.
Okay.
So Q3 work, make this a library that other drivers can import. That's awesome. Thanks, Sergey. Anything else? Okay. So let's go through these. I see you guys are already going in and assigning things, which is awesome. Host path is already done by Sergey and verified by both Shing and Sergey. NFS, I'm not sure if you're the right person for this, Shing. Are you?
Definitely need some help on that. So I tested the NFS plugin using CLI, published and unpublished, that works. And then I built an image. So when I was so I started the plugin and all the containers successfully. I checked the logs, looks good. Then I was trying to test that with the, there's some files under examples where you can deploy pod and mount the volume. So I'm getting some issue with the PV. Basically, it was trying to bind the PV and the PVC because it's actually, this NFS plugin doesn't really have a create volume. So I think that part is probably not even related to CSI yet, so I need to spend some time and figure out why it cannot bind. So the PV was created, and
Got
it's
it.
just hanging there. Yeah. So yeah, if someone knows this NFS plugin well, then
So
great.
cool thing is
Might
that for
help.
0.2, there is a new plugin capability that this plugin can take advantage of. The plugin capability allows a plugin to declare that it does not implement the controller service at all. So this is something that we should probably implement for the NFS plugin.
Okay.
It will also require updating the external provisioner and the external attacher to check for this capability. And if the capability is not present, then basically do a no-op.
Yeah, so I don't think this place it's really trying to do that yet. It's because it's not really creating a storage class and try to provision.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's basically it's like it create a PV statically and then it's trying to bind it. Yeah, so I just need to see the logs and see why it was having a problem.
Okay.
Binding. But of course, if someone else is an expert in this plugin, that'll be great. Somehow.
I was going to say, if you need help, Waman did all the NFS stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I can sign him up for it since he's not here.
Oh, is that a root F? Okay, I will ping him then. Okay. Is that okay? Hua Ming, right? Okay.
Yeah, root FS.
Okay, I will ping him. Yeah, I know him. Okay, great.
Okay. This reminds me to track the plugin capability work for external provisioner. Okay. So it looks like NFS has an owner. Thank you, Brad and Ching, for that. Seth, Sergey has been working on. Sergey, is it okay to mark this as orange?
Oh, it's completed actually.
Oh, it's completed. Awesome. You rock. NFS, I guess, is in the works. We'll get that orange. Mach Driver, Felipe volunteered to work on that. Felipe, that would be great if you can pick that up. And Pietro for the VFS one, that would be great. So I'll go ahead and remove the question marks there. Let me know when you guys get started.
Just one question. I see that this is maintained in the RexRay repo from the guys at RexRay. What does this mean?
That's a good question. Has anybody touched the Mach Driver before?
Yeah, definitely. And that Mach Driver, actually, it's not the RexRay. It's our local now because we forked it. And so instead we are using the one that sits in the CSI test repo.
Okay, all right. So
and you should get in touch with Luis because he's also refactoring that Mach Driver because the one that came from RexRay is extremely complex and has a bunch of stuff we don't need. So Luis is removing unnecessary parts and pieces to make it just what we need.
Okay, great. I'll get in contact with Luis then. And we should also maybe update the documentation because it's pointing to the RexRay one still.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's another thing. I was actually trying to update there's a command line, right? Right now it's going to the code team. And then so I changed those to the new RexRay location. As Sergey said, we should be using the Mach Driver instead, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I probably need to pin Sergey on because you have a comment there saying there is a E2E-host path. I didn't see that. I only see a general E2E.
The E2E host path, it's in the driver's repo.
Oh, in driver's repo? Okay, let me check that. Okay, sure, thanks. I was looking at the test repo. Okay, maybe that's why.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Any other questions? All right, cool. So I think those are the drivers that we're tracking at the moment. These are the most critical things to get updated because having these working basically means that we've manually end-to-end tested it, and that's the minimum bar that I have for 1.10. Beyond that, finding a permanent home for some of these drivers. NFS right now is in Kubernetes-CSI. And under Kubernetes-CSI, the drivers that we have, we explicitly say that they're sample drivers. You should not use them for anything production. But things like NFS, we probably want a permanent home for to be able to, develop it as a production driver. Brad and I talked about this offline, and Brad was suggesting using the CSI volumes repo. Brad, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So there's a CSI volumes org. I'm going to put, the same license from Kubernetes there. It won't be under any quote unquote foundation for some time. I'm kind of looking for a home for it. But I think we're pretty well safe, and I'm going to, push the Red Hatters who are writing CSI volumes, because there's some, like Cinder and some of the other stuff's in progress. I'm going to push them to home it there as well.
Okay. So what that would involve is actually moving this NFS driver from its current home to this repository, and then making sure any pointers are updated documentation-wise.
And just to be clear, nobody would be excluded from using it, creating repos. Like, it's just a home for it. It's not trying to take ownership or anything like that. It's more to facilitate development, make it easier for us to move quick.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad, so you were saying that the Cinder driver will also be moved over there? Is that what you were
suggesting? That's what I've been telling them. They're still work in progress, so they don't want to drop it yet, but yes. And I kind of regret mentioning the Cinder driver now. It's not going to be ready for 110, but they are working on it.
Yeah, I was wondering, we don't have a Cinder driver yet, so okay, that makes sense.
We have it actually. It's already it's under the samples, right? It's just not updated.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat old. They're looking at, so the interesting thing is the Cinder driver they're working at is actually like an out of cluster Cinder driver. So you can connect to a repository from a cluster not even hosted OpenStack.
Okay.
Oh, the standalone or something?
Yeah. So it's more it's kind of cool because, you could have a mixed environment and use Cinder as storage. Whereas the current one, you'd have to be running under Cinder.
Mm-hmm. But it should be the same because it's going to talk through the Cinder API, right? Or is it different?
Yeah, it still talks to the Cinder API, but it's a little more involved than if you're running on just a OpenStack environment, right? Because it's not just attach a call, there's credentials.
Is there an OpenStack repo that we could throw the Cinder driver under?
There is, and they had that option, but it gets kind of lost in that mix. You know what I mean? And I think probably, what Red Hat usually does for upstream and downstream is there'll be an upstream and then we'll clone it into our downstream. Mm-hmm. I think we should probably do something similar for some of these drivers. We have a public-facing CSI volumes repo where we can put the stuff where everybody can come and see it, but it's actually just a fork of something else, wherever the true work's being done.
Yeah. I mean, what I would really like is to have an official repo be the owner, if at all possible. It's obvious with GCE/PD and that kind of thing, Ceph. If we could do something similar for Cinder, that would be awesome. That would be one less driver for us to worry about. Yep,
and that's fine. I don't know who wrote the original one in here, or if they want to.
Well, it's actually my coworker actually wrote it, but he's got reassigned to do something else.
Okay.
So I will check with him as well and see if other folks have other opinions. So what about this Go for Cloud place? Is that, I don't know if that's a place for plugins.
Go for Cloud is something beyond our control. That's another upstream that we have some influence with, but it's not a lot.
Okay. Okay, so let me, I will go check with my coworker about this one as well and see if they have some other suggestions on how this one should go
Yeah,
to.
if there's a permanent, like official OpenStack organization that we can put the Cinder driver under, that would be the best scenario. If that's not possible, then this CSI volume seems like a backup option.
And
so this is okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is okay. So this is like GitHub.com and CSI dash volumes. Okay,
correct.
Yeah.
Right.
And with the Cinder driver specifically, like they're wanting to iterate on it a little more quickly than what would probably be possible in the official OpenStack repo.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this stuff is good to incubate out and then move it off.
And I mean, you can always do that as long as there's an official home for it. You could have your own fork that you develop, more quickly and then push back in batches.
Right.
It makes it a little bit more painful, but it's nice to have like one official home for it where it's sponsored by the organization that kind of owns it.
Yeah. Well, what we don't want to do is maintain it or have
absolutely
0 issues opened against it on a one release.
Which is why if we could put it under OpenStack, that would be the best.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That is going to help reduce the load for this team going forward. So I'm looking forward to that. Next up is cutting the 0.2 release of all the external components. We can do this as we approach 1.10. This is just going through these repositories and tagging them. Documentation needs to be updated. We need to update the CSI doc on Kubernetes, make it more user-facing, talk about CSI versus Flex, that kind of thing. Anybody want to sign up for this work? Nobody likes documentation. All right, I'll take that on. Updating external documentation for beta and CSI. This means the documentation that we have at Kubernetes CSI. Currently,
I could do that.
Okay, who is that?
Felipe.
Felipe, awesome. Thank you.
Musi, yeah.
And then a second part of this is extending that documentation to have a section on how to write a driver. Anyone interested in that?
But isn't there a section already for developments?
I think it is there, but it's empty if I remember correctly. Let me take a look. I had it open here somewhere.
Well, so first of all, let me question this one because this is something that should probably be under CSI proper, right? This isn't a Kubernetes specific.
No. This has to be Kubernetes specific, right? Because it has to talk about like YAML files and how you pair the external provisioner with the driver. It's not necessary. Maybe it's mislabeled. It should be how to deploy a CSI driver on Kubernetes.
Yes, and also like an architectural breakdown because I have nonstop questions about this. I see Mr. Stanfronic has joined. He has mentioned that he may be looking into doing some kind of internal presentation for it that maybe we can make a little bit external as well.
Okay, and who is that, sorry?
Jan,
okay. How to create and deploy a CSI driver on K8s. So are you signing Jan up?
Let's give him 1 second to object.
So I didn't get what the difference would be with regards to what's already there.
It might be like now that I'm looking at it, it might be the same thing. I just want it to be much more crisp and clear because I think if I come and look at this doc, it's not clear to me where I get started if I want to create a new driver. Just give me a step-by-step recipe. Like step 1, create your CSI driver according to the spec and then containerize it. And then step 2, pair it in this way. And step 3, deploy it using these types of YAML files. These are the options that you have kind of deal. I think this is much more like a design doc. Like if I go and try to read it, it's not very clear to me where I start. I have to like piece it together in my head.
Okay. Well, if Yan can do it, I can do it together with the other task above. I think they are very related, right? So
Yeah, that would be great.
I don't know much about drivers, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe Felipe can get started, and then we can iterate on that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Hey, I have
thanks.
a question from the, the Cinder folks that were working on the CSI driver. Attributes on the PVC, is there any visibility right now to the actual CSI layer? So if I put like a beta or some kind of annotation on a PVC, from everything I can tell, it's impossible to view that.
No, yeah.
So the only thing I know is the tags. That is actually the metadata saved in the. If you look at the volumes in Cinder, you can see the metadata there actually. Attributes, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if that's the same thing. So if you not the CSI, but if you just use the in-tree Cinder plugin, if you create volume and then you get the tags we talked about the other day, the cloud tags,
right?
That passing, and then those will be like metadata,
right?
On the volume, you can actually see
the
that.
use case here, Brad? What are they looking for?
Well, specifically, you guys are familiar with the operator pattern, right? I mean, it's the same thing they've been doing with Provisioner, where you look at objects and take action based on that. They're wondering, well, so they have some stuff that's, using that same pattern. Basically, okay, so I'll be very specific. They built this clone function where they can clone a PV as part of a workflow for a bigger application. And it's using an operator pattern. It's a controller that's deployed, and it looks at the PVC for a clone attribute and then goes and copies the data to a new volume. They're trying to figure out how to do that same type of thing using CSI.
So as long as they, so they some labels that get applied on the PV object?
Right.
Okay.
There's no way for them to do it exclusively with CSI. I think they've got to have Kubernetes tie-in.
Yeah, they'll have to have a custom external provisioner.
Yeah.
Right. Because we have a volume attributes field add to the PV, but basically you need to teach your external provisioner to populate those attributes. Because right now we don't use much that. We just add like the provisioner ID as one of the attributes in the in the volume attributes.
Okay, so I think that's the thing is like they just need to be able to copy in their controller. They need to be able to copy attributes to the volume somehow. And it sounds like they can. It's just a matter of.
I think it's something we can consider adding to the CSI spec in the future. It's similar to what Xing was talking about for the snapshot stuff. Basically, have some way to decorate labels on a created object that get pushed back to the user. They're opaque to the CO, but they're visible by the user. So maybe we can consider that in the future. But for now, we don't have anything, so they would have to use a custom provisioner.
Okay, sorry to derail.
No, that's fine. In the future, maybe tags in response. Okay. That is good. And thank you, Felipe. Huge thank you for stepping up on a bunch of stuff, including the documentation. Next up is testing and continuous integration. The most important tests here for me are the ones that are on the Kubernetes side because they kind of do the end-to-end testing. David is working on the end-to-end test for GCEPD. I would like to also have the end-to-end test with the Mach Driver running and running as part of continuous integration, enabled as part of CI. Do we know what the state of this is right now?
We don't have a well, currently in the Kubernetes, the end-to-end test uses a host path driver. So we could, if you want, we could use a Mach Driver. We just
Okay.
need to basically publish an image with that driver, make it available, and then the same set of tests can be run against the Mach Driver.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that the host path is already green, and then basically these tests just need to be enabled in CI. Adding the Mach driver, given that the host path one is already there, I'll make it a P2 because the Mach driver seems to be not in a ready state yet. But if it gets into a ready state, adding a end-to-end test on the Kubernetes side will be great. Anybody interested in taking that on?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely do that. It's
Awesome.
sure.
I can do that too with you, Sergey, to know a bit more about the tests, since I work on the Mach driver already. Maybe once I'm done updating it to the V02, then we can talk to do this together, maybe.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so how about put both of your names on here, and then for the second task, either of you can work on the next one too. Because once the end-to-end test is running, we would like to make sure that it's running as part of Kubernetes CI, and you can see it in the test grid running, you know, every hour or whatever, and that way we can catch regressions pretty easily. This should be fairly straightforward. Is it okay to put your names on there?
Yep.
And in fact, we can put David's name on here too because. Okay. Okay. The next set of tests is for the external components. We have the external provisioner, external attacher, and driver registrar. We need to have unit tests for them, which for the most part, I think they already have. We might want to extend these unit tests to be more complete. We should also add end-to-end tests. But the most important thing I'd like is to add continuous integration, meaning like Travis or something that will build the binaries and run the tests against them. That way we can catch any breaking changes. Is anybody interested in doing that for any or all of these components?
I still have that question out to Erin. She said that she was working with Luis and had bootstrapped some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think Luis got started on some of this stuff, and then he's not here right now. So
Where is Luis? Is he on PTO or?
I think he said he was in London at some conference this week. So I believe he should be back next week, but I'm not certain.
Okay. Give me until Monday to hear back from Erin.
All right, so we'll leave these unassigned for now, and then we'll come back to them. Next up is splitting the CSI sanity framework into unit and end-to-end tests. Was somebody already working on this? I think David is the one who suggested it. David, are you on the line? He is not. Okay, I'll follow up with David offline and see if he's interested in working on this. The purpose of the CSI sanity tests is that it creates a common library of unit and end-to-end tests that the drivers can then just import and run against themselves. The drivers don't have to re-implement the tests for every single different driver. And so once this is complete, the task on the driver side is basically import these libraries and make sure that they run against the driver, and then enable CI, continuous building and testing, in that driver's repo to make sure that these tests are running against that driver continuously and we catch any regressions. I'm marking all those as P2. They're nice to have to prevent regressions and things like that, but not show blockers or anything like that.
Do we really need the CI part as the P1? Are we saying P1?
No, I'm putting CI as P2.
Well, you have the sanity checks as...
The sanity check, the CSI sanity, this is the library that these drivers can import. So having a library that the drivers can import, I think, is important.
Okay, and just to be clear, P0s block 110, P1s do not.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And we can reassess that as we go through the next few weeks.
Okay. So I'm a little nebulous about the P0 for the end-to-end test too. I mean, it's an alpha feature, right?
P0 for the end-to-end test. This one right here?
Yeah.
Just above.
I mean, we do it if it's in tree. Sure, we do it, but
it's a beta feature. We're moving CSI to beta this quarter.
When was it alpha?
It was alpha last quarter. So Q4 1.9, it went alpha. And this quarter with 1.10, we're pushing it to beta.
Okay.
And then most likely next quarter, it'll remain in beta to give it time to bake and to get feedback and have folks actually start implementing drivers and that kind of thing. And then finish off things like the block volume support, which we haven't added yet, and a couple other things that are missing, and fit and finish. And then the quarter after that, we can consider moving it to GA.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why I really want to make sure that the CI is running on the Kubernetes side for this thing. And it sounds like that should be pretty trivial because the host path end-to-end test is already green. If I can get the host path one in and at least the GCE PD or Mach Driver ones in, then we just turn on the CI for all of them. That would be great.
I think there's a lot of devils in these details.
I agree.
We don't have end-to-end tests going for our storage drivers that are in tree because of all the devil details.
Yeah. I think the nice thing about starting from the outside and moving in is that you kind of implicitly test some of the details from the inside in the black box test with the Kubernetes. That's why I want to make these higher pri than the end-to-end test for the individual drivers themselves.
Sure.
But the hope is that eventually we have full end-to-end testing for each one of these components. And of course, we'll probably end up punting some of this to next quarter as well. All right, this sounds great. Thank you all for stepping up and volunteering. We'll reconvene on Monday. Please feel free to ping me or anybody else on the team on the Slack channel or via email if you have any questions. And we'll reconvene on Monday.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.